Hello everyone, and welcome to Dungeons & Die Rolls. Today I'm going to be describing and reviewing the role-playing game Phoenix Dawn Command, written by Keith Baker. Now, for us role-players, Keith Baker is probably best known for this. Here's Phoenix Dawn Command. There are some pretty noticeable differences between these items. Unlike most role-playing games, where you just buy a rulebook and have at it, Phoenix Dawn Command comes as a boxed set that contains everything that you need to play, which is cool because it has some unique mechanisms involved. Now yes, there is a rulebook, and it's a pretty beefy rulebook too. It's got about 447 pages of information in here, but only 26 of those are player rules that your other people at the table would have to learn in order to start playing a longer, more involved game of this. The rest of that is all lore, background, history on the setting, and DM information, which is called the Marshal in this. It also includes, which I think is super cool, a 7-mission campaign to take you through a story arc in here, and I think that's really helpful, because one of the problems that I have when I pick up a role-playing game that has its own setting that I'm not familiar with is trying to come up with a storyline that I think is accurate in representing what that game is supposed to be all about. And that's when you get into worrying about, am I going to shell out extra money on some of these pre-written modules or things like that. So I think it's great that there's that starter campaign included in this. Now, also included in the box are piles and stacks and just tons of cards. This is not all of the cards. This is a 5-pound box, and a lot of that comes from piles of cards. There's tons. All of the cards are tarot-sized, and they're a pretty good thick stock. They've got a nice finish on them. And they all have this Egyptian-style artwork that's used on them. And while I can see that that might not end up being everyone's personal tastes, I think that it does a really nice job of evoking this air of heroic grandeur, which is really what you want your players to be feeling as they play Phoenix Dawn Command. I'm going to come back to the cards and how you use them in just a minute. First, I want to give an overview of the setting and story of Phoenix. The Empire is under siege. A variety of supernatural forces are sweeping the land. You have an undead army that's making its way down the coast, wiping out any settlement in its way. You have a magical chant, a song that anyone who hears it goes into a homicidal rage. While singing, it's infected entire towns that have to be destroyed. You have the reappearance of fallen spirits that feed off of human emotions, make dangerous bargains, very much like the Fae, if you will. So all of these things are going on, and they are collectively known as the Dread. And the Dread is systematically destroying human civilization as we know it. The only bright side to all of this is the reappearance of the Phoenixes. Phoenixes are people who died under tragic circumstances and for some personal reason have chosen to fight their way through the Crucible. The Crucible is like your own personal purgatory. It's these trials that you have to fight your way through, and once successful, you're reborn, suffused with supernatural power. Phoenixes are essentially immortal. They can be killed. It's difficult. They're much hardier than regular mortals. But they can be killed. If they are, they're simply reborn. And that's the primary leveling mechanism in this game. Instead of advancing through experience, whenever your character dies, you become more powerful the next time that you reincarnate. Now, the trick to all of this is that the human soul can only handle dying and being reborn a total of 7 times. So once you've reached that 7th life, if you die again, that's the end of that character. What this does thematically is it encourages the heroic last stand, which is something that's prevalent in all of the literature and cinema that we watch, but it's normally kind of hard to pull off in a role-playing game. I've spent months playing this paladin, and I've carefully crafted his level progression, skills, and feats, and I don't really want that character to die. I want him to do cool stuff, but I don't want him to make that ultimate sacrifice, even though that's a paladin-esque thing to do. Here, in Phoenix, go for it. Make yourself be the shield for everyone, the killing the dragon at the sake of your own life, because you're going to come back tomorrow. And in fact, you're better for it. And that's just, it's got a thrill to it that other role-playing games don't have. Now, when you're creating a character, there are 6 different schools, and I might call them classes by accident from habit, but there are schools of Phoenix. And they're analogous to traditional role-playing classes, but the thematic reasoning behind them is each of them has died in a different way. So you have the Bitter, and the Bitter is kind of the DPS guy, like a barbarian, if you will. Feeds off of having wounds to do greater damage to people. But he's bitter because his first death was a failure. He wasn't strong enough, he didn't achieve what he wanted to do, and he's bitter about it. And so when he comes back, he's fueled by that anger and his rage, and his class abilities, school abilities, are based around that. Or you have something like the Durant, and the Durant died while protecting something, or trying to protect something. And so he's come back, and he's supernaturally tough. And the Durant is the tank of the game, and he's got abilities to make people attack him and absorb damage, and he's really hard to take out by just doing wound damage to him. Now, all of your school abilities are also on cards. You don't really need a character sheet to play this game, because all of your class information, your very little bit of equipment, and all that is going to be on cards. And the only thing that you might need is maybe prop up a little tinted index card that has your name on it. But your class abilities, you start with a selection of core abilities at rank 1. And there's some choice involved of cards that go into your deck. Also in your deck are going to be these attribute cards. And every class uses 2 attributes. All of them use Grace. That's Grace. And then they also combine that with either Strength or Intelligence. And you're going to use those cards when you want to attack, defend, or do something skillful. Something, miscellaneous action in the world that has a chance of failure. And you're going to be playing cards from your hand and trying to make their value add up to your target number. So if you're hitting an enemy, they might have a defense of 6 and then additional health levels that you want to aim for. So I would need at least 9 or 10 damage to hurt this guy. If I'm defending against something, I'm going to be told that there's an attack coming at me with a value of 8. And so any defense cards that I can play against that will reduce the effectiveness of the attack. And then when you're doing skills, very similar. It's standard that anything beneath a 10 is a failure for the skill, but then higher is better. the number of cards you can play are limited, usually 2 or 3. And you're saying, well, I have values from 1 to 4. That's going to be pretty hard to get 10 or higher. Well, there are a couple of ways around that. The first way is traits. Now, all cards that have a value of 1 also have a trait here. And what that allows you to do is, if you can describe how that trait is helping you do the action you're trying to do, then it doesn't count towards the limit of cards that you're playing into the spread. So in this case, the trait is brilliant deduction. So if I'm trying to make some kind of knowledge or lore check to discern information about something, I'm limited to 3 cards because a skill spread takes 3 cards. But I could also say that my character is staring at this and he has a flash of insight and he's going to make a brilliant deduction about the nature of this object that he's studying. And that would allow me to add this card to the spread for no cost. It doesn't count towards the 3 cards. There are also parts of this that are up to the marshals, the DM's interpretation. If you roleplay adding this card in well, he could choose to augment the value of it. Instead of just counting as 1, it could be 2, 3, up to 5. Additionally, something that I think is neat about the system is they encourage the use of trait-based trump cards. So if you are trying to figure something out about how this mechanism works, and you have brilliant deduction, and you're willing to discard that card, that might completely bypass the need for a skill check entirely. You say, I'm going to make a brilliant deduction about how this works. And the marshal goes, yes, you do. It works like this. And so there's no need for uncertainty or trying to reach a number at that point. The other way that you can boost yourself is each school has a list of skill specialties. And the skill specialties allow you to immediately get a bonus for whatever it is you're doing. If I'm doing something that's relating to athletics as a bitter phoenix, then I'm automatically getting a +5 to the value of the cards that I play. In addition, they let you add cards from your hand that you normally wouldn't be able to use for that. So if I'm trying to be stealthy and sneak, normally that would involve intellect cards, because intellect is what governs things like perception in the game. As a bitter phoenix, you don't get intellect cards at the beginning of the game. You get strength and grace. But I have shadows in here, and so I can say that I'm trying to hide and sneak in the shadows, and that gives a +5 to the result of my cards, but it also allows me to use strength cards in that check instead of intellect. I was going to say intelligence. So there's a lot of room in this system for your players' descriptive abilities and role-playing to supplement what they're doing. And that's really the point, because just based on card values, it's moderately difficult to get numbers high enough to damage some of the enemies or pull off some of the skills that you would want to do. But when you start using the skill specialties and the trait cards, then you can get up to those heroic values that really represent what Phoenixes are all about. Now, as I already mentioned, character advancement in this game, leveling if you will, is also powered by death. So every time that you die, you get reborn the next day, and you become more powerful. The way that that works mechanically is you're going to evaluate the circumstances of your death, and you're going to, just like you did during original character creation, you're going to say how your character perceives that death. So you could always say, if I'm bitter and I died in failure originally and that's why I'm a bitter phoenix, that's how I can interpret every subsequent death also. And that allows me to rank up and add more bitter cards, talents, abilities into my deck. You can essentially cross-class in this game. I could say that I died in failure in my first life, I'm a bitter phoenix, but this time I died trying to protect the rest of the party or trying to protect this group of mortals that we were defending. And so for this reincarnation, I can add cards from the Durant school, which is the tank school that's all about defending people. And so by your storytelling interpretation of how you die, you can add abilities from other schools and really get into some in-depth customization of your character if that's what you want to do. If you just stick with the school that you started with, every subsequent rank has a number of choices about what kind of new character abilities you're adding to your deck. You're also going to be adding higher value attribute cards to your deck. You have the ability to weed out cards that you no longer want. And you also, starting at rank 2, get a Talon, which is a supernatural weapon that's bound to you as a phoenix. And they have some pretty cool and helpful abilities. Now, during gameplay, in addition to managing your deck and your hand of cards, you have 2 player resources. You have wounds, and you start with 5 wounds as a phoenix. And the point of reference is that regular human mortals can take a little bit more than 1 wound. So by the time you've taken 2 wounds of damage, you've already sustained injuries that would kill a regular mortal. And the way that the book describes that is that you have this supernatural resilience, you keep going, but you've taken those injuries. So you're walking around and you might have shards of broken rib coming out of your side, or you might have an arm that's hanging limply, however you portray yourself as having this damage. But in my mind, it can get pretty gruesome. If you're up to 4 wound levels, your character is still alive and functions fully. But at that point, what's left of you as a person, you're going to be broken and battered, and it's terrible. But entertaining to describe. You also have sparks, and sparks represent your magical essence as a phoenix. And the basic function of sparks is to add 1 to the value of a card spread that you're making. Now you start with 10 of these sparks as a first level phoenix. And they're a resource just like your health. If you run out of sparks, then the magical energy sustaining you is gone and you die. The big difference between wounds and sparks is that it's always up to you to spend a spark. There's nothing that the marshal can do that will take a spark from you. You're always choosing to spend it on a class ability or to increase the value of a spread. And so that's a big way that the timing of the heroic sacrifice can come into play. You might be facing an enemy that's killing off the mortals that you're supposed to protect, or it's destroying your party, or something like that. And so you really need to take this thing out. And you look at the card, you look at the health, and you determine that you need to hit 20 in order to kill this enemy off before it can do any more damage. But with the cards in your hand, their value, the traits that you have, anything you can tie into the attack, you can only get a maximum of 10. And so it's perfectly valid for you to say, okay, I've got 10 from my cards, I'm going to burn 10 sparks to increase the value of that spread, I'm going to destroy that enemy and go up in a burst of flames. and I'll reincarnate at a higher rank tomorrow morning. So why doesn't everyone just die all the time? Well, the missions in Phoenix are designed to be very time sensitive. You're in this state of war, everything is a dire threat coming right at you. And so your missions are going to be like, you just got teleported to this city because it's full of people and there's an undead army that's 2 hours away. You don't have time to say, well, I can take out that army if I'm more powerful, so I'm going to off myself. No, because you don't get to come back until tomorrow morning. And you don't get to come back exactly where you died. There are structures that the Phoenixes have built called Eyries, and they have magical flames in them to sustain the Phoenixes. And that's where you get reborn. So if you had to do traveling to get to where you are, you don't get to go there right away. And by the time you reincarnate, well, the 2 hours are gone. Sure, I'm back, I'm more powerful, and the undead army has already wiped out that city. Oops. So you're encouraged to reserve your death for when it can really change something in the course of play. So overall, I really enjoy this system. I think that the story behind it is very cool. I like the idea of the Phoenixes being reborn and growing in power. I like the idea of the dread, where there's all of these different supernatural threats, and they're somehow all tied together, but there's a lot of room for you to add whatever you want. They supply you with ideas like these undead warriors, the chant, the fallen, but you can very easily add in something like werewolves, mutated beasts, magical curses, whatever you might think of, and it all ties into the dread. A big part of the game is that the dread is a complete mystery. No one knows what's causing it, and for the grand part, no one knows how to combat it. You can't kill the undead soldiers. They just reassemble, come back up. You can't, at the beginning of the game, you can't cure someone who's been infected by the chant and they're raving and trying to kill everyone. You can't kill the fallen spirits. They're going to be able to reassemble themselves, come back in their spiritual form. And so the game is very mystery oriented, where you're trying to find answers to these things. How can I kill the undead, the bones? What is the cause of the chant? Is there a cure for it? And you're going to be playing through and trying to discover these answers to these mysteries, trying to discover what ties it all together. And the rule book, the campaign provides some answers to a part of that, and in the marshals section, it supplies a possible answer for the entire thing, so that you as a marshal know what the ultimate reason for everything is, what the ultimate goal might be. But it's only a suggestion, and it says it several times in here, that you are absolutely free to come up with your own version of what's causing the dread, any other symptoms of the dread. It's all up to you as a DM, or a marshal, sorry. So I really enjoyed playing the game. I like the way that the class abilities help each other. There's some very cooperative abilities in here. I like the way that the use of traits and skill specialties encourages role-playing description on the part of the players. And that can take a little bit of a learning curve for them to kind of figure out how they're supposed to be creatively interpreting their hand to give them bonuses that they need to hit the values that they need to hit. But I haven't had anyone that had a hard time with that. So it's once you figure out what you're trying to do with your cards, it's fun and creative. The Phoenix Dawn Command as a product is not perfect. I love how much stuff there is in this rulebook. I don't love the book. It's perfect bound, not section sewn like a lot of other role-playing game books are, which means that you can't open it up to a section and just lie it flat for easy reference. And there's no PDF that I can get any information about. I found posts back from when this was a Kickstarter, and I saw information about the backers of the Kickstarter getting PDF copies, and I think that I saw a post someplace about a PDF being eventually available, but there isn't currently one anyplace, and I emailed the studio, Together Studios, to ask about getting a PDF since I had purchased the game, and I never got a response about a week and a half ago. So that's something that is not awesome, because if I want to keep playing as a campaign and I'm going to ask my players if they want to do that, it's a lot of work for me to take all of the information for each adventure out of here and put it into something more accessible like RealmWorks and have that there so that I'm not trying to manipulate this and hold it with my stomach and look through things in the book. There are some minor editing errors in here. There's some mistakes in the grammar. There's some wrong page references. Nothing terrible, but I noticed it. One of the larger things that confused me is the talons, your personal weapon that you get at second rank. There's a table in the book that I'm not going to look up right now, but there's a table that shows you what happens as you advance in ranks, basically your level up chart. And it says you get this kind of card, you can change this kind of lesson, and there's an entire column for your talon. And in the text description of talons, it talks about them evolving with your character and gaining power as you go on, and I think that's pretty cool. But that's it. There's no other mention of it in the book. And in that column for the talons, in the advancement table, there's one entry. Second rank, you get a talon. And that's it. And so it's very unclear to me whether that's something that got left out of the book, or something that they're planning to add as a supplement, or something that they simply changed, and you're just going to get a talon and it works the way it's going to work for the rest of your career as a Phoenix, and they had to get rid of that idea of it evolving with you. I don't know. It's unclear in the book, because it talks in that chapter and in the index when you look up talon, it talks about a weapon that evolves with your character, gains abilities, but it doesn't say how it does or what the abilities are when you gain them. There's no information like that, and it doesn't even say to be released in the talent supplement, whatever. The last thing that I could see putting off some people is the cost of entry into this. It's only sold as this boxed set, which, I mean, you need the cards and all of that to play the game, and it comes with tokens for your health and your sparks and conditions that can be inflicted on things. But that boxed set is $65. I think it's a fine value for what you're getting inside, but the fact that it's $65 to be able to play the game, to be able to try the game, could definitely be a bar for some players. If you don't have access to an awesome dude who owns the game and is willing to play it for you, or you don't have access to a convention where it happens to be run at the moment, that's kind of a lot of money to try a game like this. And, you know, role-playing games are, they're very subjective. Not everyone is going to like the setting. Not everyone is going to like the way that these cards play out. And so the fact that there isn't... I would have loved to see a print-and-play demo for this. I would love to be able to get a PDF that has, 6 pages of describing how you adjudicate rule spreads, and a couple of pages of cards that you could print off and sleeve with some card stock and be able to just try a demo adventure of this. There are pre-generated characters available, and they tell you how to construct from the cards in the box. They tell you how to construct the starting deck for these characters, and they're cool. They have sections on the sheet for each of the pre-gens that gives you a little bit of customization for their background. It gives you options for how did you die? Well, I died doing this or this or this. What's the reason you came back? This or this or this. What are you afraid of? This. So there are, they're pretty interesting to use. They're not entirely predefined, but they give you options within the story of that character and what they should be like. So it helps to give players for a demo game some additional feeling of the background. I like that. I would have liked, and I suspect a lot of people would like much more, the ability to try this out. So that's a potential downfall. That being said, I am not at all unhappy for having shelled out the dollars to get this. I think that it's a very unique game. I think that it's a lot of fun. I will have links in the description for going to Together Studios website or Amazon to pick this up, and it's the same price from both. But on Amazon you get the Prime shipping. I was actually at a convention with Keith Baker and his partner when they were giving a panel talking about this, and it kind of pushed me over the edge of wanting to try the game. So I ordered it that Friday evening, and when I got home from the con on Sunday afternoon, box was there, and I learned it up over the week. So anyway, that's my opinion. I really enjoy Phoenix Dawn Command. I enjoyed running the demo, the first mission of it. I'm going to ask my players if they'd like to try a campaign of it. I'm happy to answer questions about the system, and if you have interest in the game, then like and subscribe to this channel, and I'm going to be putting up, my next video will be a session report of how that demo went, that first mission, and I'll kind of describe how the players tackled the various challenges in that. Thanks for watching.